He looks you dead in the eye, nods at exactly the right moments, repeats the last few words of whatever you just said, then asks the one question that gets you talking even more. Looks like attention, feels like care. You walk away from that conversation thinking someone finally, truly saw you. It might actually be something else entirely. Intelligence gathering. Listening to understand and listening to exploit look completely identical from the outside. Psychologist Bertram Forer ran an experiment that later got named after him. He gave students a personality test, then handed each one a personalized character analysis, supposedly built specifically from their results. Students rated the accuracy at an average of out of piet. Nearly perfect, according to plenty of them. The truth was, everyone got the exact same text, word for word, a string of generic lines like, "You sometimes doubt whether you made the right decision," and "You need others to like and admire you."
Researchers reran this experiment for decades afterward in dozens of variations, with horoscopes, handwriting analysis, even fake DNA test results. The result held steady every single time. The vaguer and warmer a statement about you sounds, the more likely you are to accept it as uncannily, personally accurate. The brain happily claims a vague description as its own, as long as it sounds warm and general enough. It feels like finally being understood. Someone who wants to seem attentive doesn't actually have to be attentive. Speaking vaguely, with confidence, is enough. The listener fills in the rest themselves, convinced they've just been seen through completely. There's a technique hostage negotiators train on for years. One of the core moves is repeating the last few words someone said back to them, out loud, with a slight questioning tone, as if genuinely curious. It creates the illusion of deep engagement. The other person feels intensely, closely listened to, word for word. In reality, it's a way to keep someone talking, pulling out more detail than they ever meant to share, without asking a single direct question that might raise a flag. Specialists call it tactical empathy. Externally indistinguishable from genuine interest, internally pure data collection. The difference between a real negotiator and an everyday manipulator is only the goal. One uses the technique to save a hostage's life. The other uses it to find out exactly where it hurts most and file that away for later. A manipulator doesn't remember what matters to you. He remembers what you're vulnerable to. A real listener walks away from a conversation remembering fragments, feelings, a general warmth, and forgets half the specific facts because he was busy empathizing, not building a file. Someone studying you remembers everything. The date, the exact wording.
The soft spot you mentioned once, in passing, 3 months ago, without thinking twice about it. Filed away like a folder labeled "Use Later." And this isn't always malicious from day one. Sometimes someone genuinely was listening in good faith at first, and later just decided that since the information was already sitting there, why not put it to use? Sounds abstract? Here are 7 situations where this gets very concrete. On their third date, she mentioned she got teased about her weight as a kid, and it's still a sore spot. Said it in passing, not thinking it mattered much. He responded with exactly the right warmth, held her, said all the right things, and the night ended feeling unusually close. 6 months later, during an argument about something completely unrelated, whose turn it was to pick up a package, he suddenly dropped a comment about her body, aimed at that exact old wound. Too precise to be an accident, too sharp for someone who supposedly forgot that conversation months ago. A salesperson in a meeting listens closely, nods,
asks careful follow-ups about budget, about who in the household actually makes big purchasing decisions, about what keeps the client up at night. The client leaves feeling truly heard, maybe for the first time after months of dealing with indifferent account managers. In reality, the salesperson just collected exactly the leverage needed to close the deal on terms that favor him, pressing precisely on whatever worried the client most. A new friend listens to work stories with such genuine-seeming interest that it feels like finally having someone who actually cares. He asks the right questions, remembers coworkers' names, follows up on project details months later. A few months in, it comes out. He used the details from those stories to make himself look sharper in front of shared leadership, slipping your own ideas into his own conversations a week before your presentation, carefully enough to look like coincidence. A manager listens attentively to an employee's complaints about overtime, nods, jots something in a notebook, promises to look into it, even offers coffee to keep the mood warm. At the next review, those exact complaints resurface as ammunition against the employee. You said yourself you couldn't keep up with the workload. Maybe this role isn't the right fit. He wasn't listening to help. He was listening to have something ready in case the employee ever became inconvenient. First date. He says, "There's a sadness in you most people never notice, and you're not like anyone I've ever met." She feels seen for the first time in ages, like he's spotted something in her nobody else has. The exact same lines, word for word, same tone, turn up when two of her friends compare notes a year later at dinner. The phrases were vague enough to fit almost anyone with almost any past. Everyone's a little sad sometimes, and almost everyone secretly believes they're not like the others. There's a relative who, at every family gathering, listens carefully to who fought with whom, who's unhappy about what, who let something slip after the third glass of wine. At the next holiday, that exact information resurfaces at the most awkward possible moment. Casually, almost by accident, worked into small talk. Every single time. An online acquaintance spends weeks commenting thoughtfully on every post, recalling small details, where you went to school, who you argued with last month, a dream you mentioned in passing 6 months ago. It feels like finally finding someone who genuinely studied and valued you. In reality, all of it was pulled from public posts ahead of time, built up over a few weeks to fake years of closeness, timed to ask for money right when trust peaks. So what actually helps? 1. Notice where someone's attention actually lands, on your joys and interests, or mostly on your fears, your insecurities, your finances. 2. Watch whether things you've shared come back in a supportive context later, or resurface as ammunition in an argument, or as leverage for someone else's benefit. A good listener reminds you of your own words to support you. A bad one reminds you of them to land a hit at exactly the right moment. 3. Be cautious of lines that sound impossibly precise and impossibly generic at the same time. "You're not like anyone else. I understand you like nobody ever has." That might be the Forer effect in action, not actual insight. 4. Pay attention to whether someone's follow-up questions are about your feelings or mostly about facts, logistics, weak points, vulnerabilities. That single difference in focus gives away the actual goal of the conversation better than any words could. None of these signs work as a guarantee on their own, but together they build a fairly accurate picture once you start actually paying attention to them. Being heard and being studied feel almost identically warm in the moment. The difference only shows up later in how carefully or carelessly someone handles what you told them. Attention isn't always love. Sometimes it's just reconnaissance ahead of an attack that won't happen today, but someday, exactly when you're least expecting it. That doesn't mean you should stop opening up to people entirely. It just means paying less attention to how warmly you're being listened to right now, and more to how carefully what you said gets handled afterward. Subscribe. Next week, we cover how to tell real interest from information gathering, right from the very first conversation.